the way this works is you're leading with a servant's heart, and you're simply educating. You're not selling, persuading, chasing, begging, because desperation has got a smell to it. And if you're desperately seeking money to fund a deal, the money is going to elude you.
Welcome to The Path to Wealth, the show about well-being, fulfillment, and financial freedom. And I'm your host, Hennche. Welcome back to The Path to Wealth. I'm your host, Hennche. In this episode, I'm excited to welcome Jay Connor, a real estate investment leader and is known as the Private Money Authority. Jay has coached over 2,000 real estate investors since 2011, teaching them how to raise private money. Jay will guide us through how this unique approach to raising money works and what it has done for himself and students over the last decade. Thank you for joining us today, Jay.
Hannes, thank you so much for inviting me to come along and be on your podcast to talk about my most favorite subject, and that's private money, because it's had more of an impact on our business than anything else we've done.
So where did the pain start to dive into private money? Like, what was the original pain point that you tried to solve for?
Well, I remember the pain very well. So I started investing in single-family houses all the way back in 2003, full-time here in Eastern North Carolina. And from 2003 until 2009, the first 6 years, all I knew to do was rely on the local banks to fund my deals, to fund my single-family houses. And then in January 2009, that's when the pain hit. I called up my banker, his name was Steve, and we had done a ton of deals together in those first 6 years. And I had 2 properties under contract to buy. And I've learned like that over the telephone that my line of credit had been closed, shut down with no notice. And I had a great credit score. I had a great history with the bank. And my banker's name was Steve. I said, Steve, why is the bank shutting my line of credit down? And Steve says, Jay, don't you know there's a global financial crisis going on right now? I said, no, but now you've given me a global financial crisis. I said, I can't fund these 2 deals. And so anyway, I hung up the phone and I sat here for a moment. And I thought to myself, and I asked myself a very, very important question. And that question was, I said, Jay, who do you know that can help you with your problem? And by the way, these people going around saying every problem's an opportunity. I want to throw up. I didn't have a problem. I didn't have an opportunity. I had a problem. I had these 2 deals and no way to fund them. So when I asked myself that question, who do I know that can help me with my problem? I immediately thought of Jeff, good friend of mine, living up in Greensboro, North Carolina at the time. Well, he was a real estate investor. And so I called him up and I told him what had just happened. He said, well, Jay, welcome to the club. And I said, what club is that? He said, the club of having your line of credit shut down at the bank. He says, they just shut me down last week. I said, well, Jeff, how are you going to fund your deals? And he says, well, have you ever heard of private money? I said, no. And he wasn't talking about hard money either. And I hadn't heard of hard money either, but he says private money. I said, no. He said, well, have you ever heard of self-directed IRAs and how people can use their retirement money to invest tax deferred or tax free and loan money out to real estate investors? I said, no. And so I learned very, very quickly about private money and how you can raise it quickly. So I was able to raise $2,150,000 in less than 90 days when I first learned about private money and was cut off from the banks.
Well, I think that speaks to your network that you already had to some degree.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, these private lenders came from people that I go to church with at the Rotary Club. If somebody is a recluse and does not have a network, of people, then of course I teach people how to grow your network very, very quickly, right? Because as I'm sure you know, there's a direct correlation between your network and your net worth.
Yeah. So how do you help somebody grow their network genuinely? Because we all know kind of the quick sales, and nobody likes to be sold on an investment. Like if I learned one thing over the years is that you gotta approach people kind of where they are, and you can never push an investment up on them because
You are so right. In fact, did you know after all these years, right now we've got 47 private lenders that are loaning money on our deals. Here's what's interesting. I've never asked anybody for money. I've never pitched a deal. And people and real estate investors say, well, Jay, how do you have access to $8.5 million through your private lenders? And you never ask anybody for money and you never pitch deals. And here's how it works. First of all, how I raised that initial $2 million and all the rest of it is I put on what I call my teacher hat. And that says my private money teacher hat. So I separate conversations between teaching people, individuals, ordinary people like you and me, how they can earn high rates of return safely and securely. But I'm not having a deal in that initial conversation to pitch to them. So I'll show them, I'll start conversations with, have you ever heard of self-directed IRAs and how people can earn unlimited money per year, tax-free or tax-deferred? Simple conversations. And so when I first started out, I had a private lender luncheon, had about 20 people there. I raised $969,000 at one luncheon. And so separating the conversations. So how do I do that? I teach first, either in a group or one-on-one. By the way, these 47 private lenders that we have, not one of them had ever heard of private money or self-directed IRAs until I taught them about it. And so I put my program together. So you see, the way this works is you're leading with a servant's heart, and you're simply educating. You're not selling, persuading, chasing, begging, because let's just say desperation has got a smell to it. And if you're desperately seeking money to fund a deal, the money is going to elude you. So first we teach, right, in our own network of people. And then when I've got a deal for them to fund, they've already told me how much they want to invest. Maybe they've got retirement funds, and I've introduced them to a self-directed IRA company that I recommend, and they'll move their funds over there. So they're ready to go. So when I've got a deal or a property for them to fund, I call them up and I give them what I call the good news phone call. So I call them up and I say, I got great news. I can now put your money to work for you. You see, they've been waiting for the phone call, particularly if they've moved their money over, the retirement funds, to a self-directed IRA. They're not making any money until I put their money to work. So I'm ethically bound. So here's the good news phone call, and I'll give you the script. The good news phone call is, I've got great news. I can now put your money to work. I've got a property under contract in Newport with an after repaired value of $200,000. The funding required for the deal is $150,000. By the way, I know they got $150,000. They already told me. The funding required is $150,000. Closing is next Friday. You'll need to have your funds wired to my real estate attorney by next Thursday, and I'm going to have my real estate attorney email you the wiring instructions. End of conversation. The most stupid thing I could do is ask them if they want to fund the deal. Of course they want to fund the deal. They've been waiting for the phone call to fund a deal. And, so I'm not going to ask them if they want to fund the deal. Of course they do. And so again, it's separating, teaching the program, they're ready to go, and then having the deal for them to fund, separate conversation. Now, you asked me a couple of minutes ago, how do you grow your network without chasing people? It's real simple. Join BNI, Business Networking International. I've raised millions of dollars by being an active member in BNI, and that's not a social or civic group. That's a group that is founded by Ivan Meisner. And I mean, here in Morehead City, population 8,000 people. There's a BNI here in Morehead City, right? So you join the group, and now all of your other members are supporting each other and bringing them leads. So it's like having a group of support to where you're bringing leads to them for their business and they're bringing leads to you for your business.
Yeah. And especially there, the terms are clear. It's business. Everybody wants to generate business for each other. You're not just like trying to educate somebody who isn't interested in business. Which I think it's like trying to make a horse drink that isn't thirsty.
Exactly. I like the way you put that.
Yeah. So, how do you help your students generate the necessary mindset to get that? Because, not everybody that has the obscurity around funding necessarily has the right mindset in place to feel comfortable doing this. Some of them might lack a track record. Like you initially already, you had a track record. I'm like, hey, I've been doing this for multiple years. This has been working. The only bottleneck right now is funding has dried up. You could be the partner with me in these deals and participate in the upside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how do you get the mindset right to begin with? Well, first of all, let's talk about fear. So we really don't know how fear works. We just know how we're feeling when we're not comfortable, right? So first of all, it's very natural. It is natural to feel uncomfortable when you're starting to do something for the first time that you've never done. I mean, I was uncomfortable. I mean, the very first potential private lender that I talked to, I was uncomfortable because I never had that type of conversation. So here's one way we get the mindset. First of all, there's nothing to fear. And here's why there's nothing to fear. And that is, most of the time in this context, new real estate investors who haven't raised their own private money may fear rejection. Well, here's the answer to fearing rejection. How can you fear rejection if you're not asking anybody for money? You're leading with making a difference in their life, right? You see, there's a lot more private money than there are deals. And so over the years, we have received so many thank you notes and thank yous from our private lenders saying you have changed our retirement years by allowing us to be a part of your private money program. So truth of the matter is it's a win-win scenario, and the private lenders need you more than you need them because there's so many more of them than there are deals. I mean, for example, I've had a problem for a long time. I've got more private money accessible to me than I can put to work, right? But now let's address the other part of that with a brand new real estate investor that does not have a track record. They're just starting out, right? Well, here's the answer to that question. For goodness sakes, don't start out by yourself. Don't make the mistake I made. You need to get either a mentor or a coach to work with you that is in the business today, has been in the business, knows what they're doing. And that can be somebody local in your area that, could help mentor you. Of course, there's, mentors and coaches out there that, do it professionally as well. But be sure and work with somebody that can hold your hand and walk you through. Now, when you're working with someone like that, you can leverage the relationship with that person when you're talking to new potential private lenders. You can say, honestly, myself and my business partner, that is whoever you're working with, have done X number of deals, et cetera, and you can leverage their experience since you're working together with them.
Yeah. And this way, you don't look like you're even faking it. It's very genuine. It's like, hey, this is somebody who has walked this already.
Yes.
They've done it 5-10 years. They've had multiple exits. You can point towards a track record and be like, but I'm aligned with that individual and they are deeply involved in this transaction to make sure that your money is safe.
Absolutely. And a part of teaching the program to a new potential private lender is, of course, you would want to share with them how they are protected, right? Because obviously, whether you have done business with somebody in the past or not, they want to know, well, what happens if you don't pay me, right? What happens if you don't pay me? Well, here's the answer. If you don't pay your private lender, the property does. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you're not going to borrow unsecured money. You can legally. You can just do a promissory note and borrow unsecured money, but don't do it. You want to give your private lender a mortgage or a deed of trust here in North Carolina that's going to collateralize that promissory note so that if you don't pay them, then the recourse that the lender has is getting the property. Now, of course, they don't want the property. They don't want to mess with the property. That's why they are a passive investor as a private lender. But that is their security. In addition to that, how do we protect them? We don't borrow more than 75% of the after repaired value of the house and the property. So that's going to give the private lender what we call a 25% equity cushion so that we're not over leveraging the property. Now, I didn't say a maximum of 75% of the purchase price. I didn't say that. 75% of the after repaired value. That's why we always bring home a big check when we buy. It's like, who wants to get paid to buy houses, right? I always bring home a check from closing when I buy because we're borrowing more than we need for the purchase. And of course, a lot of times that's $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. We take none of our own money to the closing table. So we're going to use that $30,000, $40,000, or $50,000 for the renovation of that house, right? We also protect the private lender, and this is giving them a comfortable, secure feeling. We name them on the insurance policy, the property and casualty insurance policy, as the mortgagee. So that way, if there's a claim, an insurance claim against the property, then the private lender is named on the check from the insurance company. So the private lender's got to sign off on that check in order for you to, deposit that check. We name them on the title policy as an additional insured in case there's any other title issues down the road. So again, giving them these extra layers of protection, and you want to know what protection to give them. I've got that in my book, Where to Get the Money Now. Very, very easy to read. And so how do you get the mindset right to begin? Here's another answer. Know your program. So it's just easy conversation.
Mhm.
You just want to know, like, what's the interest rate that you're going to pay? I pay 8%. I've been paying 8% with no points or origination fees. The same thing ever since 2009. Keep the same program for everybody, and that way all of your private lenders are treated equally in the same way. So the mindset, know your program backwards and forwards, and it's not that many points to it, to where you can be having a cup of coffee at the coffee shop and just talking through your program, as to how you can, pay people high rates of return. Here's one more comment on the mindset, and that is, here's another way I never ask for money. This is called the indirect method of conversation. And my very first private lender that I had when I was cut off from the bank, I went up to him after church on a Wednesday night at 7:30 at Bible study. And we went back into the nursery and to visit for a few minutes. And I said to him, I said, Wayne, that was his name, one of my first private lenders. I said, Wayne, you know everybody in this town. And he did, very well connected. I said, Wayne, I need your help. And here's exactly what I said. That's a magic phrase, by the way. I need your help. And here's what I said. I said, I've now opened up my real estate investing business. Now, and bear in mind, this is right after I was cut off from the bank. I've now opened up my real estate investing business by referral only to people I know and trust. And here's what I need your help with, Wayne. When you run across somebody that is complaining about the low yields or CD percent, certificate or deposit, what they can make at the bank, or the volatility of the stock market, or losing money in the stock market, would you refer them to me, and I'll tell them about my program where I'm paying high rates of return safely and securely? Well, what do you think Wayne said? Wayne said, well, now, Brother Jay, what you got in mind? And I said, well, are you saying you might be interested? He said, yeah, I might be interested. We're only earning 3% down at the bank and a certificate of deposit. He said, what kind of rate are you paying? And I said, well, that depends on the deal. What sounds high to you? He said, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6%. I said, Wayne, I can't pay you 5 or 6%, but I can pay you 8%. He said, put me down for $250,000, right? So I went to his and his wife's home the next day, and I went over the entire program like I was talking about, how they protected, what's the length of the note, frequency of payments, interest only, that type of thing, how they can get their money back in case of an emergency. And so that 250,000 quickly became $500,000 after they understood the program. And so you see how that works. I started that conversation with, I need your help. And I never asked them directly for money.
Yeah. So you just mentioned in case of an emergency, how they would get their money back. How is something like that structured where you would return the
So we
money?
put in the promissory note what's called a 90-day call option. So for any reason they have an emergency that comes up, we will give them their principal back and any unpaid accrued interest. And 90 days gives us plenty of time to replace their funding with another private lender that we have. Now, we don't put that in the, we don't put that 90-day call option when they're loaning money from their retirement account, because it's very, very unlikely that they're going to, need the money back when they're loaning it from their retirement account in a self-directed IRA. But in reality, in all these years, I've only had 2 small notes called due, $30,000 notes that were in second position because of medical emergency. Now remember, this is your program that you can customize any way you want to. I say duplicate mine, it sort of works, but you can create any program you want to teach. And if you don't want to offer a 90-day call option, you don't have to offer it, if that'll help you sleep better at night.
So at one point, do people might need additional legal advice? Like, there's always where you might get SEC into SEC territory, where do people need to be careful that they stay within the legal boundaries?
Yeah. So here's where the difference is. When you're raising money for a fund, such as if you're doing a commercial, project, apartments or whatever, then you're going to need a SEC attorney to draw up what's called the private placement memorandum. But in this world of private money, we're not raising money for a fund. Everything that we do is what's called one-offs. And a one-off is you've got a private lender or a couple of private lenders that are funding a particular single family property. So these
is that
one-offs,
limited to single family? Because we do have 506Bs where we syndicate, but it's multifamily. And then it obviously there's some SEC compliance with that. How does that differentiate?
Yeah. So again, on the 506B, here's where the difference comes in. Dodd-Frank and all that. The difference comes in is that if you're going to publicly advertise for money, like on the internet, TV, radio, direct mail, all that, then typically you're going to be limited to accredited investors.
Yes.
But if you are starting your conversation with people in your network or people that you have met socially, then the SEC is not going to be involved in it. However, when it comes to attorneys, you always want to have a good relationship with a real estate attorney for your closings. I've been using the same real estate attorney and firm ever since 2003.
Yeah, definitely in terms of those compliance where you just want to make sure that you're not part of creating any securities. Yeah. And in terms of the self-directed IRA, you did mention that you refer a company. For many people, the concept of taking charge of their own retirement and actually maybe taking it out of Wall Street, so to say, out of their 401k, where it used to earn meager returns compared to maybe what they can earn in a self-directed IRA. How do you make people comfortable with those additional layers? This is something, a hoop they have to jump through, so to say. It's also, there's some fees like that come with a self-directed IRA. What would you say is that conversation like to make somebody comfortable actually transferring their money into a self-directed IRA?
Right. Well, I let the experts do the talking and I get out of the way. So all I do is it's important, and I'm glad you asked this question. It's important to have a relationship as a real estate investor, if you're going to raise money, with a self-directed IRA company, also known as a third-party custodian, so that when you're talking with an individual that you know, and they have retirement funds that they're not happy with, then all you have to do is make that introduction to the person that you have the relationship with at the self-directed IRA company, and have a Zoom meeting with the three of them or a conference call. Introduce your potential private lender to the self-directed IRA company and let them answer the questions, right? Let them do the talking, because they are the expert as to what you can do and what you can't do, and how the logistics work. And I'll tell you why this is so important to have this relationship. I mentioned we have 47 private lenders right now that we're using on different projects. Over 50% of those 47 people, over half of them are using their retirement funds. And you know what? Not one of them had ever heard of a self-directed IRA company until I told them about it, right? So again, this is all about education. If you don't have a relationship to introduce to a self-directed IRA relationship to introduce to your new potential private lender, you're going to miss out on over half of the private money that's out there available that you could use.
Yeah. What would you say is a reasonable fee for those custodians?
It depends on the self-directed IRA company that you use. The one that we're referring to right now, there is no, of course, by the way, good point. Regardless of where people have their retirement funds, they're going to pay fees. They're going to pay management fees. If they got it in Wall Street, they're paying fees. So there's fees no matter where you got it. The company that I'm recommending now does not charge any kind of a fee based on the amount of that's in your account. How they calculate their fees is by transaction. So that way, you're not spending any money on fees unless you're making money. So they charge a fee for when you're actually investing or loaning money on a deal.
So that's only when the money is in velocity, not when it's sitting in a deal.
When it's just sitting there. Yes.
That is very good. That's actually a very important distinction, because there's companies who charge quarterly fees, and regardless of what you do with your money, they will make their money.
That's right. They're going to charge you their fees whether you're making money on your money or it's just sitting there in your account.
Yeah. Well, Jay, where can people find out more about the Private Money Authority?
All right. I'm glad you asked. I finally finished writing my book. And my book is all about what we're talking about, how to raise private money without asking for money. And the name of the book is Where to Get the Money Now. And the subtitle is How and Where to Get Money for Your Real Estate Deals Without Relying on Hard Money Lenders or Institutional Money of any kind. It's on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon for $20, but don't do that, because you are listening to this show. You can get it for free. Just cover shipping. And it's not an ebook. This is an actual book that we put in priority mail. So you can pick up my book at jayconner.com/book. So I'm an ER, not an OR. So jayconner.com/book.
And we'll also make sure to get that URL and put it in the show notes so that everybody can directly go to the book. Well, Jay, thank you so much for your time. This has been extremely informative. And yes.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us at The Path to Wealth. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Check out our upcoming guests and be sure to share it with all your friends and family that want to take their life to the next level of wealth.